Hi, we are so happy to have our friend Warner here today. We met Warner, Alice and I met Warner at our alma mater, Denison University, at an entrepreneurial conference. And he was one of our keynote speakers and shared his story. And within seconds, Alice and I are looking at each other, we're like, we have to have him on the podcast. So we've got a fun interview today. And Warner, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very honored to be a part of it.
Werner, why don't you give us a little bit background of your story?
Sure. I don't know where to start. I guess I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I attended Denison University, graduated and traveled the world for about a year, which was a very cool experience. I will say that trip, I read a business book that said to go get a year of sales experience. I read a lot of entrepreneurial books, and it said go get a year of sales experience, and even if you don't make a dollar, you'll learn more in that year than you kind of will anywhere else. So I got back from my trip. I took a job working for Clear Channel, now iHeartMedia,
Mhm.
as a 100% commission sales rep. So it was a total sink or swim environment. Did quite well in a couple of years, but then kind of burned out early in my career and felt like I wanted to do more and challenge myself more. Moved to New York City, started a consulting company with a few colleagues that I met at Clear Channel. Did that for a couple of years, founded another company called Buzz Table, and did that for a few years before it was acquired by Cisco Food Service. Went to go work at Cisco's wholly owned subsidiary, which is a tech company in Silicon Valley. Uh, from there, spent about almost 5 years there. Ended up working in a corporate division, kind of realized it was not for me. Started a direct-to-consumer beverage company during COVID or right before COVID. So not a great time to be starting. I'll just say that it was in the cannabis space as well, which had a lot of hairs on it and made the company very challenging to scale. Sold that company to a holding company actually in Columbus, Ohio, near our alma mater, and then worked for food service tech. And now I currently am the chief revenue officer at a company called Cold Track, and we are in perishable direct-to-consumer fulfillment. So a lot of my career has been in food, and that's kind of a passion of mine that I've turned into a career, which I'm very happy about.
That's amazing. So I want to go back to your beginning where you said you needed a year of sales because so
Mhm.
many people graduate from college and they don't think of sales as their category they want to be in. But like I feel that the sales world, you learn so much about yourself because by getting that resiliency of hearing the no and then still having to making the call and then having the rally squad behind you be like, you got this, and you're getting the door slammed. Can I just ask in all those experiences, because in a funny backstory, as I was preparing for the podcast and your intro, I was like, I don't even know how to introduce him. He's got such a rich background. So you did such a good job in all those different stories. How did sales help you kind of stay on your path?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Getting those no's, and just realizing that you have to bust through the nose, and then just all the fear that comes with a, a sales meeting, asking somebody for money for the first time, um, eh, communication. I mean, there's just so much that you learn. I mean, I'll go back to, well, I know, storytelling. I love to tell stories, but I'll never forget my first sales meeting I ever had. It was a cold call job. Like when I showed up to my desk, there was a phone book on my desk, and it was kind of like a joke that's like, here's your client list, like start dialing. These were back in the days when there were newspapers, and I would, every Sunday I'd clip ads out to see people that were advertising the DC market. I worked for a rock radio station, 18 to 34-year-old demo, DC 101. Really cool job to have, actually, because I got to go to a ton of concerts. But when I booked that first sales meeting, um, I'll never forget it. I was so nervous, and I walked into the meeting and started presenting off of physical flip kind of presentation. And in the middle of the presentation, I froze and I didn't know what to do, and I ended up closing the pamphlet and walking out of my own meeting. and going to my car and like yelling at myself in the mirror. Like, I mean, it was terrifying. But like once you have that first experience, like just then you realize that it's really just this thing you've created in your head. So like having those experiences toughen you up. And then like every single one that you get, you just get a little bit sharper. You learn. I think that's the most important thing. You make mistakes and then you learn and you adapt and you try again.
That is awesome. Like I do love that. Is there a big difference between somebody else's money and your money? So you're kind of a serial entrepreneurial now. So sales on somebody else's dime versus your dime. Can you any insight for those that are want to be entrepreneurs?
Oh, I mean, asking for money, whether you're asking someone for, you know, $5 or $500,000, it's daunting no matter what. And again, back to sales is kind of everything, right? You're out there selling a product, or if you're a CEO, you're selling shares in your company. It's all kind of a different version of sales. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you're asking for other people's money for the most part, you have a fiduciary duty to make sure that there's an ROI. I guess you could, put it that way. And
Mhm.
that's the name of the game. If I'm selling advertising, I want them to actually have, a return on their investment. If I'm selling shares in my company, I want to make sure that their investment turns into some sort of liquidity event in the future.
Mhm.
So Warner, do you practice? I mean, do you have like a little practice speech or do you have an audience, like a practice audience that you work with before you have to make an ask?
I will say that role playing is a great tactic in sales. Again, I pretty much have primarily a sales career. But yeah, I mean, uh, practice makes everything. But even just in my day to day, having people role play, like, all right, I'm the coach, I'm the sales manager, I'm gonna be the client. Pitch me. So we did a lot of that. I mean, at Clear Channel, they had Clear Channel CCU, Clear Channel University, and that was a nice part of being part of a large company because they actually had a sales training program that I got to go through. I picked up a lot of, there's a lot of tips and tricks, feel, felt, found. I don't know if you ever heard that
Oh
one.
yeah.
Yep, feel, felt, found. It's like things like that that you may not use the exact words, oh, I understand how you feel. Other people have felt that way, but they found, but you pick up these tactics that you can kind of put your own spin on. So yeah, I mean, just practice roll. I mean, I think every time I do a pitch, whether no matter what it is, I kind of either do it by myself. I always like to run through things, or I'll find a colleague and just say, "Hey, I want to bounce this off of you." So practice is very, very important.
Well, I'd love to switch gears and talk a little bit about leadership, which is probably something that we should all practice as well and never we still have leadership, but so maybe it's not switching gears. But when it comes to leadership, so now you own your own company. So you have Cold Track
Yes.
and you're lead.
I'm not Cold Track, just to be clear. Cold Track, I'm an executive team member at Cold Track.
Okay.
So I'm not I founded three other companies before this though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll stick with Cold Track then,
Look at
but
Cold
either
Track,
way,
yeah.
doesn't matter. How do you lead your teams? Like making sure they're doing a lot of different there are a lot of hats they have to wear. And how do you lead them through the ups and downs of growing a business?
Sure. I guess the first thing to do is make sure that you have a clear vision and a clear direction, and make sure everybody is aligned and uh, rowing in the same direction. So making sure that there kind of is a North Star that everybody is very clear on. Um, and then also making sure that people understand kind of what your leadership style is, how you are going to evaluate and how you're going to grade performance. So having very clear KPIs. What do I want to see out of you? Making sure there's always clear action steps in terms of what you want to have happen from a delegation standpoint. I think delegating is something in leadership that is very maybe often overlooked, but like delegation is an art. A lot of people that step into a leadership role for their first time may try to do too much themselves. If they come from an individual contributor role, they might kind of think, well, no one can do it better than me, so I'm just going to do it myself. That's a very, very, when you're a leader, you need to empower people, and you need to delegate, and that's kind of how you scale yourself. That was actually back in Clear Channel. I applied to be a regional sales manager early in my career. I'll never forget this interview question: how do you scale yourself? And I think I kind of went to what I just said. I said, "Oh, time management. I'm just going to do more. I'm going to figure out how to do more in the same hours of the day." It was a bad answer. And I remember Hartley Atkins. I picked up so many mentors along my way, but he's made his way up at Clear Channel. But I remember him saying, "You got to hire great people. You got to delegate, and you have to have people around you that are better than you in some of the areas where you may have weaknesses." So being vulnerable and understanding that you have weaknesses, and then finding people that kind of can not only lift you up, but a team that is a cohesive team that all works together.
So Warner, you mentioned that you love telling a good story, you love storytelling. And so as you're working with leading individuals, how do you use stories in order to showcase, mentor, help them thrive?
Uh, I think that stories and storytelling is a way to kind of empathize with people and also show them that you've been in their shoes. So if you have a lot of life experiences that you can relate to a specific situation, I think that gives comfort in people. If somebody bombed a sales call, telling them, I bombed plenty of sales calls, and here's what I did, and here's what I learned, and here's how I made sure it never happened again. So just I guess I always just try to use storytelling as kind of coaching opportunities for the mistakes that I've made, the lessons that I've learned, and how I can maybe have people not repeat the same mistakes that I made in the past.
I just feel like so like when you can connect to somebody at like a real authentic level, it's just more memorable. And I'm not sure how when people rise in leadership, some get it, some don't, but that ability to recognize like your job isn't to outwork, outsmart, outdo their team, but just to bring the best out of them. And I'd love to ask you, like, when you see somebody that's say newer in their career and you're like, okay, they've got raw talent, but they're heading down the wrong path. Like, how do you lead them to get aligned with where you need them to go to get the results they need and do the right things? Do you have any sort of like strategies you use in your leadership?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is to realize that everybody is different and everybody has different skills and strengths, and getting to know people on a personal level. I mean, you can do Myers-Briggs, you can do what Gallup Strengths Finders. So that was actually something that I picked up. I don't know if you guys familiar with Gallup Strength. I'm assuming so. Um, and really just kind of, I don't want to say exploit, but trying to identify where each individual's strengths are and lift those up and not focus so much on their weaknesses. Like I think that's the thing that I got out of, Strengths Finders, is that you're never gonna, everybody has their unique 32, skills or whatever it is in the priority order. Focus on those top 10 strengths and figure out how you can make those top 10 strengths. I mean, that's where you'll really shine. Your bottom 10, you can make marginal improvements on, but if you focus on trying to fix the things that you're not uh, naturally gifted at, you're gonna struggle because you're never gonna see great gains there. So I really do try to understand uh, every individual's skill sets and then lead based off of those unique skills.
Yeah, that's so great. We when we first got into Strength Finders and we had a coach on our team who was certified on it show it to us, and it was kind of that same thing. Like, so we did what most people do is when they get their strengths, you look at the bottom 10, you're like, okay, how can I improve? And she's like, that's not the
Mhm.
game. The game is
Yeah.
look at the top 10. And then as I'm here, I'm thinking of that story when I'm hearing you talk, but right before this, you were saying how a lot of leaders don't delegate well, and delegation is like what your mentor would say is important. It's almost like those bottom 10 of a leader, like you're a CEO, you're a CRO like you are, those bottom 10%, like that's great to pull somebody in and show them a gap in your leadership to say, hey, I'm not as strong in these areas. Can you have my back here? Or what do you think about that? Because a lot of times mentorship isn't because you had a mentor that told you what to do. A mentor had enough vulnerability to say, I don't know how to do this. What do you think? And they just open the door and you just walk through it. So I love, how you're saying, how you're thinking about leadership. And I'd love to kind of bring it up in a way. You have your quote that I love
I
your
do.
quote.
I do.
And I'd love to kind of hear your explanation of the quote and how it might, apply to how you lead business and life and leadership.
Absolutely. Since we're all Denison grads, I will have to go back to where the quote came from. Um, I did a dumb thing my senior year, which was I thought that I thought like, oh yeah, 2 semester senior independent research paper. That sounds like not going to class a lot and kind of doing things on my own time, which I guess is very much in my personality. I like to do things kind of my own way on my own time.
I understand how you feel. Others
Yeah,
felt
yes,
that same way,
yes,
but
yes,
what we
exactly.
found was that's not a
What I
good strategy.
found was that I had a lot of work in the second semester is what ended up happening.
Yes.
So I did a comparative analytical study of Desiderius Erasmus, a Christian humanist thinker, and Zhu Xi, a Neo-Confucian thinker that were both living at the same time on opposite sides of the world. And I had these two great history teachers, and I did not like history in high school. It was my least favorite subject, and I ended up being a history major in college. But Jushi was a Neo-Confucian thinker, and there was this one quote that stuck out to me that has stuck with me since my senior year. And I'll read it here. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. So that's something that I probably think about that quote on a near weekly basis. I think it's something that I apply to my life personally and professionally. I kind of challenge myself on it. Um, Humans like to overcomplicate things. Humans like to compare and contrast, and uh, there's peer pressure and societal pressure. And for me, it comes down to kind of want versus need, or must have versus a nice to have. And when I approach things in business, I always kind of go back to that, which is like, do I really need this? Is this a must have, or is this a nice to have? So whether it's setting budgets or coming up with marketing campaigns, and I always just try to whittle down to the must haves at all times.
I love that. Must haves. It's so important. Like we need a roof over our heads, we need clothes on our backs, and we need food in our bellies. And
And I'll
then,
and I'll I'll, I'll throw companionship in there as well. We're social creatures. You got to have friends and companions. That's
uh,
that's really all we need.
yes, and then the
Everything else is
wiser,
crap. Yeah.
but we have to choose wisely along the way. So when we can choose wisely and make smart decisions, everything else starts to compound on top of that. So how would you say you make smart decisions?
Hmm. That's a tough question. How do I make smart decisions? Um, I like to use data. I guess there's always I like to make data-driven decisions, but there's also a gut aspect that goes into it. I think that's especially important for hiring because I'll kind of go to hiring. Hiring is tough because someone on paper, the data that they wrote, but the data can show that this is a great candidate, but then you still have to kind of lean on your gut and your instincts to make sure that you're making the right hire. I've made great hires and I've made not great hires. So smart decisions, I think, come from a combination of data and intuition and gut. And if you can nail that, that's how you make the smartest decision.
That's great. So how would you make those decisions in order to stay above center? Because, this is the above center podcast. So we want to
Yes.
want to know what the above center thinking is.
I think that if you find people, if we're going to talk about hiring, you need people that are respectful and kind. First of all, I try to be every day. You need people that, if we're talking about leadership, you need people that are self-starters. You need people that have stamina. I will say that I have a high level of stamina that some people can't keep up with, and I've realized that more in my career that not everybody has the stamina that I have. And that goes for my wife, who sometimes is like slow down, and it's hard for me to slow down. Um, or people at work where I work a lot. It's not like a little bit of a stress junkie, I think you could say. And stress kind of does inspire me. Um, but you just need to find people that are good, genuine people and people that want to make a difference. And yeah, I would think that it's as simple as that.
And how do you like differentiate? So I know when people are interviewing, they're putting like, this is me on my very best day, and their practice interviews and things like that. But to really get to know how they'll handle conflict or how they'll handle disappointment, there's a different, kind of energy that we see that sometimes they're not always behaving themselves under that level of stress. So in the hiring process, do you have any strategies you use to kind of stress test their stamina and their will to overcome obstacles?
Yeah, so during the interview process, I sometimes like to assign tasks and projects. Don't even need to know I just want to see how people think through things. So I will sometimes ask for people to show up to an interview with a one pager on something, or assign them a little bit of a project or task. Um, I'm also, communication is also key. So I'm a big for anybody that's listening, if I do not receive a follow-up email or acknowledgement after an interview, I it's hard for me to get over that one. I just think that if especially in the sales world,
Mhm.
you gotta follow up. You gotta have clear action steps. You have to have next steps. I also think that interviews are two ways, and I think a lot of people don't think about that during the interview process. You're also being interviewed. So I love to assess what type of questions people ask. And if I show up to an interview and I give them an opportunity to ask questions and they have none, it's not a good sign.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is like sales, it is kind of an audition of how they'd handle the customer and how they, would handle certain things. So by having that simple expectation, it's not that different than how they behave. All right, so let's fast forward. So say you've
Yeah.
hired the right person. How do you help in the first 90 days? Because what we are finding is, we're kind of where we were in the 90s, early 2000s. There was kind of a long-term contract between employers and employees, and that's broken. And so in our experience, we've noticed that in the first 90 days, that new hire that you've been desperate to find is either updating their resume to stay connected for their next job, or they're signing their name and figuring out how to be so successful. How do you make sure the first 90 days they are given the tools and knowledge and like maybe those small wins to kind of stay with you for the long term?
Um, I will say the first thing to do is make sure that you get plenty of, and I'm not FaceTime like we have right now, but actual in-person time. We live in this remote world. I've been working for the most part remotely since, oh man, I don't even know, when did I move here? 2017, 2018. So I've been up in my third floor home office. I travel all over the place, and I have an office in the city. I have a facility in down the street in New Jersey right now, but getting people together face to face is invaluable. So I really like to get as much FaceTime as I can, like, and go out to dinner. Again, this is where you get to know the intricacies of people.
Yeah.
Get to know what makes them tick, get to know what their passions are inside the office, outside of the office. Um, and then again, empowering them. So making sure that they have the ability for them to put their imprint on things.
Mhm.
Um, Clear communication, regular one-on-ones, kind of all of, I guess, all of the stuff that you should do. But again, going back to how are we going to measure success together? What is mutual success? Having them put input on their KPIs, and what's the dashboard that we're going to look at every month to determine whether we're going in the right direction. So I think that's very important. And then also I tell people that uh, in having, I've had a lot of great mentors. I've mentioned some of them. That one of my first jobs when I'd been a startup founder and I'd led small teams, but when my company was acquired by Cisco Foods, I I got an opportunity. I got told by the CEO that I was a senior director of enterprise sales, kind of selling my product. I report up to a CEO. Long story short, 6 months in, we want you to become the VP of sales of this whole organization. And it was, I mean, I was honestly scared. It was the first time I think I kind of had imposter syndrome where like I knew I could do it, but I also kind of thought like I just had a lot of self-doubt. I overcame that by getting I actually accepted the role under the condition of I want a mentor.
Mm,
And I'll give a shout out to Dave Pugh, who was the market president at Cisco, or sorry, at Clear Channel, and he was in the Bay Area when I moved to the Bay Area, and for 6 months he was my personal business coach that I would speak to, and he had so much more experience than I did. So having mentors that aren't part of the company, maybe you could, but just making sure you have a network of people because when
mm,
you're new, you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're doing. So you don't want to ask like dumb questions, maybe to, your CEO or the CRO that you're reporting to. And you also, if you're leading a team. So having kind of someone outside that you can bounce things off of and get feedback and get guidance from people that have more experience is critical. And I think something that a lot of people maybe don't think about as much.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm not sure in this world where we're connected with so many people, the art of asking for help is kind of assumed in like what a lot of people are doing, but they actually don't ask for genuine mentorship and help like that. Like, help me be better. Like they're helping for like a task or they're helping for like, hey, I got this question. And that seems like done by everybody. But what you're talking about is like another level of relationship and mentorship. In today's day, like how do you seek mentorship? Like how do you go about this? Kind of in the crowded space of being connected with so many people. How do you seek mentorship or recommend it for others?
I think you just need to put yourself out there and you just need to stay. I mean, it might be as simple as staying in touch with people that you respect and staying in touch with people that you respect and admire, where you think that you can become better by staying in touch with them. Um, I've been throwing out a lot of names, but Chris Breuer was my first sales manager at Clear Channel. He still calls me on my birthday every single day, and I left Clear Channel in 2007. I still get a phone call from him.
Hmm.
Just things like that. And I know that I could pick up the phone and call Chris Breuer right now. I haven't talked to him in a while. I think I missed his call last year, but just people that you connect with, staying in
Hmm.
touch with them. And staying in touch is like, everybody's like, oh yeah, I see their post on social media. No, it's like picking up the phone and
Right.
calling somebody.
I
That's
genuinely.
actually that's something people love to send text messages and emails. And someone today on my team just said, "Hey, what do you think about this email? I'm not getting a response." I said, "Did you try calling?" Oh, no, I'm gonna call. I mean, I think people like to hide behind kind of short form
Mhm.
communication or written communication, but like pick up the phone.
Yeah, well, there was a time period where people were so good about screening
Yeah,
that now it's taken the opposite extreme that you have so many like automations to like get people like digitally away. But when somebody calls, you're like, oh, they must really need me. Like it doesn't
yeah,
ring as often.
yep, yeah. I booked a meeting a few weeks ago by just picking up the phone. It was a big deal that was stuck in my sales team's pipeline, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pick up the phone and I'm going to basically call and book a meeting myself. And I ended up booking a meeting and flying down to Houston, the next week.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's almost like your quote, like life is pretty simple,
Yeah,
but
don't
we
overcomplicate it.
complicate
Don't sit
it.
there
Don't
spending
overcomplicate
an
it.
hour writing
Yeah.
words. Just pick up the phone and have a conversation. Yes,
No, the goal,
agree.
like, really, I feel like sales leadership is all about making sure the team believes what they do matter. And if you fuel them
Mhm.
with that, they should have like be a little fearless. Just you can call somebody like what you do matters and they're going to care about it. And if they don't want to buy it, it's good to know,
It's
even
good to
though,
know. The other,
yeah.
I'll say this, another quote, nothing is worse in sales than a maybe. So you
Okay.
got you got to drive people to a yes or a no. And sometimes
Mhm.
a no, then you a no is better. Maybe is just all right. I don't know what happened, but a no is all right. If someone says no, I look at a no as an opportunity to why? Why are we at a no? And really good salespeople can turn that no into a yes. Obviously, getting a yes is the best thing you want in sales, but I think a lot of people just give up too early. Um, so get somebody to say no. It takes a lot. Again,
Yeah.
a no's okay. And guess what? A no might be a no now. Reach out to me in 6 months, and then just actually follow through and reach out to that person in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, talking about mentorship and this conversation, I know you were helping my daughter who just graduated from college. So she's in New York City and she's, applying for a lot of jobs and she was getting no. And I kept telling her my favorite sales quote is a no is just request for more information. Like
Yeah.
they may be saying
Yes.
no, but they don't know you and they're requesting more information about you. There's got to be a way to overcome it. So, but I do want to say thank you for living what you're talking right now and the fact that we met for a weekend and then within seconds you're mentoring my daughter, you're signing up on this podcast and you certainly are one of those leaders that live by their word and that level of consistency makes it easier to get results and have people that work for you. So congratulations on all you're doing. We'd love
Thank you.
to just kind of end with any final words that you're thinking about. We have a lot of people in our community that are trying to live above center. They've started companies and they want to keep going, but it's that fear that makes them fall below center. So just speaking of your personal experience or any advice you have for anybody that might fall below center because of fear or loss of confidence, any advice you have?
Just realize that fear is an illusion that you create in your head. Um, I don't know what it was, but like fear is seems like it's this brick wall that's in front of you, but it's really just like paper thin. And once you kind of poke your hole through the fear, I think that's where it sounds cheesy, but like you're limitless if you kind of just realize that you can push through fear. And I think that is really what makes really good entrepreneurs is people that fall down and just get back up. I mean, I've young kids, and I'll just say this: my son, I have twin 4 almost 5 year old boys, and they get very frustrated. And they were my little guy was struggling with the Legos over the weekend, and I he was getting so frustrated, and he was like smashing the Legos when they wouldn't stack. And I was like, look, there's two things you can do. One, ask for help, and I'll come over and I'll help you. Two is just try again. And I just by saying that to them, and again, this is a 4 year old, but he took it to heart and he asked me for help. And then I saw him kind of trying again. And that's really the only kind of advice that I can give people is ask for help. Or if you fail, just try again.
Be afraid and do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're all afraid and for
Fear is
different things, but yeah.
Yeah,
good.
it's so easy to hide behind fear and it's so hard to ask for help sometimes, but sometimes we just need to slow down,
Yeah.
redo, take a deep breath, and then
This
try again.
the slowdown is something that I have realized really is kind of the key. I've always been someone that has had the opposite, which is go
Mhm.
faster, do more. But I think as I get older, I'm realizing that slowing down really is kind of, I'm realizing it might be the key to a happier life in the end.
But also more productive. I feel like if you
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
allow yourself to relax and dream and think differently, you get better solutions, more clarity on words. So we find
Hmm.
that the slowing down is one of people's superpowers if they have the
Yeah.
discipline to do it and value it.
Yeah. So, slowing down is definitely not one of my strengths. It's definitely probably in my weaknesses, but I'm just acknowledging it more and we'll see if I can slow down eventually.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Warner, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to staying in touch.
Loved the conversation. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, so we have to talk about his quote because while I've heard it before, I never heard it like I heard it today. And this whole life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. And today, when I was hearing his interview, I'm like, how true is that? Like, there's so many things like the 4 year old doing the Lego. It's like you have two choices. You can ask for help, or you can try again. And like giving people like simplicity and making it simple, people just know how to respond to it. So I love that quote.
We do like to complicate things. I'll tell you that. I'm really good at that, actually. It's called a superpower.
I always laugh. I'll say, why say it in one paragraph when I can say it in 4 pages?
Exactly, exactly. I guess if you wanted a short letter, it would have taken more time. So,
Yeah, right. That's so true. Well, that was a great interview. I always appreciate his insight and his level of depth and types of experience he's had. He's got one of the coolest stories of starting companies and being very successful, like both as an entrepreneur and then as a leader in somebody else's system. And you could tell he believed in that mentorship and keep in touch with people and why he's so successful as a part of that.
Yes. Well, the whole idea of graduating from college and spending a year just traveling the world, that's a gift.
That is a gift. Do I delete that before Katie watches this video? That's okay, Katie. You can travel the world if you want, and then start that job. All right, Kate, Alice, I'm about to call you Katie. Great interview.
Better together.
Better together.
Learn more at thererebelcompanies.com.
That was fun.